Hello, and thank you so much for being here. I am so excited to give you this beautiful exploration into the Gene Keys. If this is your first exposure to the Gene Keys, then you are just in for a treat, and I'm so excited that we have your first experience together. And if you are already familiar with the Gene Keys, and I hope you get a little bit more depth within your experience as well. So we're going to be using the Gene Keys transmission and framework to really explore how you can explore your own depth and divine design within this beautiful transmission and framework. So I'm going to share my screen. I have some slides prepared. Amazing. So first of all, I want to share what I love about the Gene Keys, some of the things that I love about the Gene Keys. I really love this transmission in its entirety, and I'll talk about what exactly the Gene Keys are in a moment. But I love the transmission in its entirety as this deep dive into our collective evolution and our collective storylines within all of humanity. And I also love that the Gene Keys provides us with our personal holographic profile that is our individual map for our divine nature, our creative genius, and also leading us into the how this divine nature and our creative gifts can become distorted in ways that perpetuate our suffering and struggling in the world as well. In this session, I will cover what the Gene Keys are, where they came from. We'll explore different elements of your own profile that you can explore for yourself to explore this depth and divine design within yourself to really unlock and awaken your gifts, your creativity, your genius, your love, your prosperity, and all the things, all the amazing things that the Gene Keys path leads into. A little bit of an introduction to who I am. My name is Rachel White. If we haven't met before, I'm a coach, author, speaker, podcaster, and Gene Keys guide. And I have been in my business since 2016. I started coaching and yoga teaching while I was still working professionally as an accountant. And in 2018, I went all into my business. And I have always been very much into personal development through a lot of different facets, angles, and modalities. In 2015, I discovered spirituality, which has been a really big part of my business and personal growth as well. And I've also always been very fascinated in the way that different people operate and the ways that I am different to other people. And that made me slightly obsessed with like those personality type quizzes, the love language, the love languages, the 16 personality types, like even like the doshas in Ayurveda, like all these different things that give us deeper insights into who we are and what makes us unique and the way that we are different to others. And I also loved getting that insights into other people as well. And I feel like they were like the baby steps I used to take to lead into this system of the Gene Keys that has a lot more depth and nuance and paradox and complexity and all the mystery and magic and all the things of human life as well. So I found the Gene Keys in 2020. It was like the perfect timing. I was really feeling drawn to do shadow work, to do deeper emotional work, deeper inner child healing, and also really drawn to deepening my connection with my gifts and what I came here like in the world to do. And I was also really focused on creativity in my business. And the Gene Keys really encapsulated all of that in this like beautiful laid out system. And the Gene Keys, it was like human design, astrology, poetry, all of these things like merged into one really beautiful, soft, feminine way of approaching all of these things. And I just instantly felt so drawn to it, so connected to it, so in love with it. And for about like a solid 18 months, I was really only diving into my own profile and really primarily focused on my 4 prime gifts. I'll talk about what all of these things mean in a moment. But I spent a really long time just focusing focusing on my own profile, and I would bring some little things up with clients that I was working with, but I really wanted to dive in and understand it deeply for myself. I love to study very deeply into things that I feel really drawn to and passionate about and curious about. And last year, it was like mid last year, I felt really drawn to go back into the Gene Keys in a much more deeper way into the entire transmission. And it's been so fun and so amazing doing all of that like deep dive exploration into all the facets and seeing it as a whole and seeing the interconnectedness as well, and working with so many people to guide them in their Gene Keys journey as well. Okay, so let's get into what are the Gene Keys and where did they come from. And you can see I have a very basic timeline on the slide here that I'm going to dive into. So the Gene Keys are made up of the 64 story codes of human evolution. There are 64 Gene Keys, and the holographic universe, so all life, time, and space is encoded within a 64-fold matrix. And the 64-fold matrix is reflected within everything within the universe, within our human DNA, within fundamental mathematics, within computer programming. Everything in nature is made up of this 64-fold matrix, which is so cool. So I'm going to take you on a little journey. Before there was evolution, before there was anything, there was nothing. There was silence that stretched into eternity. It was perfect and it was unbroken. And then there came an event where there was something, and we can sometimes refer to this as the Big Bang. And that was the first moment of the universe. From nothing, the universe was born and was created. And it was born as sound, as light, as fire, and all of these elements coming into form. And in that moment, the perfection was broken because everything wasn't in perfect stretched out nothingness anymore. And perfection can only exist in the absence of evolution. And from the creation of the universe, there has been an evolution of the universe returning to its original perfection. So as long as we are living and breathing, perfection doesn't exist because there is evolution, and there is also paradox. There are a lot of paradoxes and contradictions and nuances in everything about the Gene Keys and everything about life and the mystery of life as well. So as the silence, the nothingness raptured into the creation of the universe, all these fractals opened. And how many fractals were there? 64, which created the 64-fold matrix of the universe. And as these fractals opened, life started pouring themselves into these fractals to repair the holes, to bring them back to perfection. And this is what created like these loops and these story code loops of life pouring itself into itself, life pouring itself into itself to experience itself. And we are part of life. And through like these fractals opening and life pouring into them, they begun to spin and split, and life emerging from all of them. And they spun into these geometrics, imagine like these sacred geometric images where everything is like overlapping and interconnected. And that is where the 64-fold universe was born from. And that 64-fold matrix became the template that life burned itself into throughout the entire fabric of space-time. And this this backdrop that became like burned into the fabric of space-time became the backdrop for all of evolution, including our human evolution. And then, millennia and more later, thousands of years ago from now, in China, the I Ching was developed. And the I Ching, if you've never heard of it before, is a system that maps out the 64-fold matrix of the universe. And it discovered that the Earth that we lived in was a like precise mathematical mirror to the structure of our human DNA. So the universe we live in, sorry, is the precise mathematical mirror to the structure of our human DNA. So it was discovered that the macrocosm of the universe is a reflection of the microcosm of every living being within the universe and every system within the universe as well. And the system of the I Ching perfectly unified the macrocosm with the microcosm. And in the I Ching, each of the 64 folds became symbols, which they referred to as hexagrams. And each of the hexagrams, so each of the 64 hexagrams in the I Ching, has a specific relationship with the 64 amino acids within our human DNA. And it was discovered that these 64 hexagrams were behavioral archetypes, and that people had different behavioral archetypes active within their DNA, but we all had a connection to the entire 64 fold. And then fast forwarding to 1987, human design was discovered or developed as this system that really unified the I Ching code with the science of astrology and a deeper understanding of human genetics as technology and science increased our understanding of genetics. And in that system, this universal birth clock was created to track archetypal genetic patterns that gave us deeper insights into which archetypes were relevant to us within our personal genetic structures based on our imprinting from the macrocosm universe at the point that we were born. And at the time that we were born, we received, or we were imprinted with the position of all like astrological objects within the universe at that point of time that we came into the world. So Richard Rudd, who is the founder of the Gene Keys, and I love that he refers to himself as the first student of the Gene Keys. He was a long-time student of human design and studied human design under the founder of human design. And through his contemplation of the hexagrams, which in human design they're called the gates, he discovered that these 64 were not fixed behavioral patterns like they were put forward within the I Ching and within human design, that they actually operated on this spectrum of human possibility, and the manifestation and expression of them was different depending on the frequency that was moving through them. And he came to call them Gene Keys while he was working with them. And so Richard Rudd, through his further contemplation and working with this system, he arrived at the revelation that it was our awareness and our attitude that changed the frequency that moved through our active gene keys and therefore influenced our own biology and our destiny. At the lower frequencies, the gene keys manifested as victim patterns, which is our shadows. At a higher frequency, the gene keys unlocked our gifts that allowed us to rise above the victim patterns and activate gifts that catalyzed as our creative expression. And at the highest frequency, each gene key manifests as this enlightened awareness known as siddhis. And siddhi means divine gift in Sanskrit, and at the highest frequency, it connected back to that original fractal that it emerged from within the creation of the universe, which is really cool. So Richard Rudd spent years writing the code book and forming the sequences that make up the entire Gene Keys transmission and framework into what they are today. And the Gene Keys became almost like the feminine counterpart to the masculine approach of human design. And I just really want to take a moment now to just deeply acknowledge this lineage that the Gene Keys came from, and just pay deep respect and reverence to everything that went into place to deliver the system and the framework that I get to use today and that we get to use today to explore our own depth and our own divine design and all the magical things that emerge from that. And working with your Gene Keys brings you into this deep process of transformation where you come to accept your own shadows and transcend them in order to unlock your gifts and to move into a higher frequency where you have more readily access to your divine nature, to that Siddhic state, like to your direct fractal connection from source, from the universe. And the Gene Keys as a book, so the original text of the Gene Keys is a code book that can really activate you and bring awareness to your own depth, but it is ultimately you that holds your own keys. And through your exploration of the Gene Keys, you will discover that you've been holding these keys all along, that allow you to access these higher frequencies and this deeper depth within yourself, and this higher purpose within yourself as well. And the Gene Keys as a system guides you into where are the keys within yourself and what sequence to use them in to unlock different parts of yourself and to explore all these amazing things within yourself. And it is your personal profile. Excuse me, it is your personal profile that is made available to you through the Gene Keys as well, that shows you the codes that are relevant to you and that are the most potent and active for you. And we also have a connection with all 64, but we have a more deeper, more potent connection with the Gene Keys that are active for us. And I'll show you what a profile looks like in a moment as well. So this is the 64 Gene Keys, the spectrum of consciousness. So you can see there's the Gene Keys from 1 to 64, and each Gene Key has a shadow, a gift, and a siddhi or divine gift. And you can see the different ones. Like the first Gene Key, the shadow is entropy, the gift is freshness, and the siddhi is beauty. And some of the words, like when you first see your Gene Keys and the words that are used to describe them, it may not make sense immediately, because something else I love about the Gene Keys is that it really has recontextualized a lot of words, and exploring the depth of the meaning within the Gene Keys will give more of a clear definition to what the actual word means in terms of having it as a gift or a shadow or a divine siddhic gift as well. And we're going to explore, I picked out 2 of the Gene Keys to explore as a story code in a moment, but I just wanted to show this is the 64, these are the 64 Gene Keys. Okay. And also I did want to also mention that what the Gene Keys has done is, it's built off the systems of the I Ching and of parts of the gates within human design, but the Gene Keys is a relatively new transmission, and so it's given contemporary language to these ancient teachings, and used really high vibrational language to communicate and to share this transmission of each of these Gene Keys and the different frequency bands that are within them, which we will talk about as well. And I also wanted to mention that within these Gene Keys, there is paradox within each Gene Key and within the entire transmission as well. And this only is a deeper reflection of like the paradox and mysteries that exist within the life that we are living in. And some of the aspects within your Gene Keys can really only be understood by experiencing them in a higher frequency or in a different way. And there are some aspects that can only really be understood once they've been embodied as well. So if you read your transmission for each of your Gene Keys, like, it is a heavy read. And I will admit, like, when I first read it, some pages I had to read like literally 10 times before I felt like I was even taking in anything. But the transmission in and of itself is an activating transmission. And I'll talk more about that a little later. And we'll also dive into a little later each of the frequency bands and the difference between the shadow, the gift, and the city, and like the magic within each of them. But I also wanted to share what your personal profile looks like and where the imprinting comes from. So this image that you see here, so if you see your Gene Keys profile, all the planets that I have here, so you see everyone has a circle on your Gene Keys profile, they're called your spheres. And each sphere, so like this is what an actual profile looks like, which I'll come back to, but I've put here where the imprinting for each sphere comes from. So this is the mapping of different astrological coordinates from the time you were born. So all the personality ones are from the time you were born, and all the design imprint is from 88 days before, or 88 degrees of the sun before you were born. So you can see your life's work is an imprint of your personality sun. It's the positioning of the sun in its relationship to Earth at the time that you were born. And your evolution is your personality Earth. And these two are always programming partners, mirror images to each other. So you can see, like with the 41st Gene Key here that we're going to dive into a little deeper later, its direct reflection is the 31st Gene Key. And I have those in my profile, which we'll look at in a moment. So we have the sun, the earth, and then we have your radiance is your inner sun, your design sun, and your purpose, who you were designed to be, is your design earth. And then we have, your attraction is the moon. We have Venus, Mars, and Jupiter. And all of these, I just wanted to show you, I'm not going to go too deeply into what these planets mean from an astrology perspective, and that's definitely like not my specialty, but I think it's really interesting to see like where the imprint is coming from for different aspects of our profile. And there are actually also 3 new spheres that are going to be added to create the star pearl or the harmony sequence very soon, which I think is exciting. And that's going to include your design Saturn, design Uranus, and personality Mercury. So you'll have 3 extra Gene Keys on your profile by the end of this year, which is super, super exciting. So the imprint is from the moment that you were born, and you were born with a set of very specific fractal patterns at play. And it is here that you can see, like on your profile, you can see the map of the forces and the patterns at play that make you who you are divinely designed to be at your highest frequency, and the shadow patterns that you fall into when you are at a lower frequency. But your profile reveals to you your higher nature and how that higher nature can be distorted. And your holographic profile gives you this look into the hologram of the universe that was imprinted upon you at the time that you were born, and all the behavioral archetypes and the story code archetypes that relate to you within your journey of evolution, your journey here in the world, like as the person that you are right now. And in your profile as well, there are specific frequent sequences that we're going to have a look at as well. And you can also see here that, so these are the 64 Gene Keys around here, and you can see they actually start at the 41st Gene Key, which is the start codon, and the order that they are in is the solar transit order. So you're on your birthday every year, the Gene Key that will be active through a solar transit is your life's work Gene Key. So you can see we started at the 41st, and at the moment we're at the 51st, and we will continue going around. So it takes a year, like 365 days, for one round like of the sun to go around and activate these Gene Keys. And then we're also other planets are also in different positions that transit through the Gene Keys in different ways as well. Okay, So let's have a look at, this is my profile to give you a little look into my active gene keys, but just to show you what an actual profile looks like and not just the the imprinting profile that I showed you before. So you'll see here that on your profile you'll have spheres, which are, each of these circles are called spheres, and the spheres represent realms of your life. And within each sphere, you have a gene key. So in my life's work is the 27th gene key. And then there's a decimal point and another number, which is your line number. So in your sphere, a realm of your life, you'll have an active gene key that draws a picture or paints the picture of the story for that realm of your life. And then the number is like the color to the story, the thing that gives extra nuance, extra complexities, just extra aliveness to the image that the gene key paints. And so every sphere has a different meaning. The life's work sphere, for example, is what you are here to do in the world. Your gift reveals to you the work that you are most suitable here to do in the world and that you were designed to do in the world. And the shadow is what interferes with you finding that ideal role for you. Your evolution is like your primary challenge in life. What is going to challenge you to rise into your gift frequency? And these are very basic descriptions, by the way. There is a lot of depth into everything. And all the spheres are connected together through these lines, which are called pathways. So with the life's work and evolution, the pathway is challenge because these two gene keys here are programming partners by the sun and the earth. And it's like the sun is calling you to rise and the earth is calling you to stay grounded. And that friction creates this challenge line where the shadows between these two gene keys will reinforce each other and the gifts will reinforce each other as well. And then we move through different pathways, like the pathway of breakthrough, of core stability, of dharma, karma, intelligence, love, all the things that you see there, and really leaning into how your gene keys are sequenced, like what pathways they're connected through, just gives a very deeper insight into your overall profile, into how everything is related and interconnected. And you can also dive into the depth of individual gene keys within your profile and all the things that reveals to you as well. Okay, let's go next. So let's talk about the frequency bands. So the frequency bands are the shadow, gift, and siddhi, which is the divine gift. To start with a definition of frequency. So frequency is a rate of vibration. And in the gene keys, we're talking about the frequency of light. So it's the frequency of the vibration of light, light waves moving through a fixed object. And in the gene keys, the fixed object is your DNA, the gene keys that are within your genetics, within your DNA. Your DNA holds the codes of your gene keys. That's the fixed object. And depending on the frequency of light, so the vibration of the waves of light that moves through your DNA and through the gene keys that you have active, it determines what is unlocked and what is experienced and what is expressed. And in the gene keys framework, each gene key has a 3 frequency band, and there are many layers in between them, but it's broken up in this way to show a clear difference between these 3 different frequency points. So the siddhi is, so if we look here, the highest frequency is the siddhi, and the siddhi is the direct fractal line from source energy from the universe, and it represents the divine nature that you have been imprinted with, and your body always senses your divineness. It senses the perfection that emerged from source energy, and it always wants to return to that which drives you in your evolutionary journey. It reveals to you your highest potential, and that isn't always necessarily something you will reach in your human form. But it is the divine fuel that energizes the expression of your gifts. So your gift frequency, which is a high frequency, which we can see in the middle, is the human manifestation of the divine gift. It is your creative attribute. It is your genetic gift that serves the collective, the evolution of the collective, and your own personal evolution and your own personal storyline in life as well. Your gifts and the sequence of your gifts will be very different to everyone else and will be unique to you. And your gifts is a combination of the gifts of your gene keys, but also the gifts of your line numbers and how they are sequenced, what order they are in, and how they work together as well. So it will be a very unique imprint for you as an individual. And zooming in like on your individual gifts gives you this deeper understanding of your natural talents, of your inner purpose. And when your gifts are really revealed to you and you get to experience them, it'll be like this remembrance of like, of course that is a gift within you. It's been something that has always been natural. And maybe it's been something you've been conditioned against or you've forgotten for some reason. But remembering, I'm pretty sure I mentioned this before, that the language of the gene keys is activating. It will activate that remembrance, which will allow a deeper embodiment and expression of the creativity that naturally emerges when you are in your gift frequency. And how you move through different frequencies is with your awareness and your attitude. And that creates these simple shifts. And I say simple because it is simple, yet there is complexity and nuance as well, depending on our personal conditioning and the life that we have experienced so far. But when you look at how your gifts work together, you start to see this really clear picture of your highest service in the world and how you most feel fulfilled through your contribution to the collective as well. And then we have the shadow, which is the lower frequency. And the shadow is just a distortion of the divine nature of the siddhi. It becomes distorted at the lower frequency. But within every shadow, there is a gift. So shadows are not inherently bad. They are invitations for you to go within your own depth. All of these, like within your gene keys, the shadow, gift, and the siddhi, it's all one in the same thing. It just becomes different depending on the frequency moving through it. So looking at your shadow patterns, like give yourself grace and understanding to know that within those patterns, there is the gift. And moving through these patterns is what offers you the full experience of being human. There are some gifts that you need to forge your way through, that you need to move through the shadow first in order to have a deeper understanding of the gift and of the siddhic nature that has been within it. And also, your shadows can conceal or guard your gifts from you and from the expression of those gifts into the world. And I really love to imagine this visually as like the dragon that is guarding the treasure. And the treasure, like, is your gifts. The treasure is the creativity of your gifts. And that dragon, like, it must be slayed or tamed in order for you to reach the treasure. There's really only two options. Well, there's three options. You can walk away and just keep living in the shadow frequency, or you can face the dragon and slay it, or tame it with compassion in some way. And you can imagine that dragon as a monster, as a demon, like whatever resonates for you. And you know, your journey and the challenges that lead up to that moment of you coming face to face with that dragon, with your own darkness, is what grounds you into deeper levels of your own core stability and in trust with your life and trust with the universe. As well, trust with life and trust with yourself. And it is your challenges while moving through your own depth and your own darkness and coming face to face with all of those things that seem really dark from a distance, but when you're up close, you see that you have everything you need to face it. That is what grounds you into the stability to know that you can hold the energy of all of your gifts and that you can move through any new challenge that arises as well. And currently, we are living in a time where the mass consciousness is in a shadow frequency. So it is very easy for us to be conditioned into this distorted low frequency of our shadows. And then that contributes to the way that we experience our shadows. Like it could be very normalized, the shadow patterns that we have active in our profile and the struggles that we face because of our shadow patterns can be normalized and conditioned as well. But your shadows have always been there as an invitation into your higher nature and into the higher nature of your gifts. And some of our shadows are also part of the sacred wound that emerged from the perfection being broken. And in that, like the separation from perfection is encoded through all of humanity, through all of the collective, and we take on a part of that sacred wound to transcend and heal within ourselves. And we also, like, some of our shadows are our slice of the collective karma that we have been given to transcend with our gifts as well. And when we transcend our slice of collective karma, we transcend that for the collective. And, we really do rise together. There is a standard of frequency that is prevalent throughout the collective. And when we increase our frequency, like everyone rises and you rise as well. And as we move into high frequencies, we really start to see the interconnectedness between us and everyone and everything within the collective. So know that your shadows are always sacred, even though they present challenges and even though they make you suffer or are responsible for your suffering. But it is your challenges that help you to rise. It is your challenges that invite you into deeper depth within yourself. And they're like, as you increase in your own frequency, the caliber of your challenges shifts as well. So you still may face the challenges that your shadows present, but it won't be in a victim mentality. It won't be in that struggling capacity. It will be a sacred invitation for you to rise or to ground into deeper stability and into your highest purpose and evolution in this world as well. And when you are exploring your gene keys, you're very likely to have a strong resonance with the shadow frequency. And it's very easy for the mind to mentally get caught up in that shadow as seeing like, oh, like that's what's wrong with me. That's why I'm struggling. Like, why have I been like this my whole life, and kind of go into this victim mentality a little deeper. But when exploring your gene keys, it's important to simply become aware of your shadow patterns so that you can see them when they are arising in your life and challenging you going forward. But bring most of your attention to your gifts and to the city, and like 10% attention to the shadows, 90% attention to the gifts and the city, to your higher nature. And it's just like your slight attitude and awareness shifts in terms of how you see your shadows that naturally brings you into the higher frequency of your gifts and of your city as well. Okay, so we're going to have a little exploration into a couple of gene keys, the 41st and the 19th as well. And I do want to say that there is a lot of depth within the gene keys. There is so much to explore within each points of this, like in fantasy, anticipation, and emanation. And I'm not going to go into a full deep dive into the 41st gene key right now. But I want to give like an overview of the story code, like the story of this 41st gene key and of the 19th, which we'll look at next. So when we look at the shadow of fantasy, the gift of anticipation, and the city of emanation, I really love to start with the city, with the direct fractal from source, which is emanation. And I mentioned before that like the coding starts at the 41st gene key. So this is a gene key that is special. It stands alone in our genetic makeup, whereas a lot of the other gene keys are linked together in what we call codon rings. This 41st is the only one that is by itself because it is the start code. It's the code that starts a new sequence of something within our genetics and within our world. Like, it is the start code within the universe to start something new. And in that city of emanation, and it's the emanation of the beginning and the end of the story. It's the emanation, like the light emanating from the beginning and the end. So this 41st gene key is really linked to stories at large. And this is why anticipation is the gift and fantasy is the city. So that emanation, that connection to the ending of the story and also the beginning of the story and the story in its entirety, when that is channeled into a human creative expression, it becomes anticipation, because the gift of anticipation connects us to this electromagnetic field where we are connecting to the whole storyline. And those with the gift of anticipation can see how the story will play out and how it will end. So we have this gift of anticipating what is coming. And with that gift of anticipation, we can pull things in from like the future part of the story into now, and we start acting on based on like what we are anticipating. And this gene key has the programming partner of the 31st gene key with the gift of leadership, so that those gifts of anticipation and leadership work together to bring new things into the world that we anticipate we need for our evolution. And this is where we start to look at the paradox, because if the story is already written, does anything we do matter? Like, does our evolution matter? Can we change the story? And it's like, our destiny is written, but we are creating our story as we go. And that is the paradox that I will leave with you to contemplate and play with, because there is so much to explore just within that statement. But so that gift of anticipation of, like being able to feel what's coming, to literally download it and to act from that place of what we are anticipating to come, when that moves into a lower frequency, it becomes distorted into fantasy. And with this gene key being the start codon, the distorted fantasy is like a false start, whereas like we only get a start mentally without actually embodying a higher frequency. So the mind can go into all these fantasies and these stories of imagining it's like this could happen and this could happen and this could happen, but none of those fantasies are grounded, so they don't actually start moving in the physical world. They're all mental stories. But all of these, like fantasy, anticipation, and emanation, is all about feeling into the storyline and seeing what is going to happen in the story and playing that out. But it's a completely different experience if we keep it at a shadow frequency where, we're just in a mental fantasy without actually doing anything, compared to when we're in the gift of anticipation and actually using that foresight and using that connection to the storyline to anticipate the needs of humanity and using our other gift of leadership to put those things in place. Again, that's a very, very brief overview of the 41st gene key. And I actually do have a podcast episode about the 41st if you want to dive more deeply into that specific gene key. The next gene key that I really love and find fascinating, and this is a gene key that I don't have active in my profile, but I feel a strong resonance with it, is the 19th gene key. And the story here is moving from codependency, the shadow, into the gift of sensitivity, to the city of sacrifice. And this is also a journey from like codependency to independency to interdependency. Sacrifice at the citic level is based on interdependence, where you feel a divine connection to every single living being within the cosmos. And within that divine connection you feel with everyone, you move into this citic expression of sacrifice, where you're willing to sacrifice your lower nature and your lower needs and desires for the benefit of the collective at large. and you're willing to sacrifice your identity and anything needed, like the sacrifice with the most honor for the benefit of the collective. And you can really only be in that point of your story when you're in this higher frequency of being willing to sacrifice yourself or parts of yourself for the benefit of the whole. And when that comes into the gift of sensitivity in our human creative expression, the gift of sensitivity is about independence. And you come into independence when you can clearly see what is yours and what is others. And this gift of sensitivity is really owning your own autonomy and your own agency, as well as being highly attuned and sensitive to the needs of others, and being highly attuned and sensitive to all fields of energy, and of other people and of different worlds and realms around you as well. And that being distorted at the shadow frequency as codependency is you're still connected, you're still like sensitive like to this energy. It's kind of like the wounded empath archetype, but you give your autonomy and agency over to someone else. And that codependency can be to a god, to a religion, to the government, to another person, even like to your spirituality. Like if you see the universe as something outside of yourself and better than you can develop this codependent relationship with it. You can develop a codependent relationship with anything, and those deep in this shadow frequency will often do that, always place their power and agency into something else that they give higher authority to. But within that codependency is the sensitivity of being highly attuned to the energy of other people. And once you can separate what is your energy and what is others, you move from codependency to independency, into that sensitivity of connectedness. And then you move into a higher frequency of interdependency, where you feel that connection to every being and you sacrifice your identity to be in that. And that is the storyline of the 19th Gene Key. And again, there is a lot within that. And there is also a lot depending on where this is placed in your profile and to your human experience with it as well. And I feel like the perfect archetype that I love to imagine when I think of the 19th Gene Key is Spider-Man, like more specifically Tom Holland's Spider-Man trilogy. I recorded a podcast episode about that as well, which is if you're a Marvel fan like me, you'll love that episode. Okay, so that's just a little insight into those two Gene Keys. I could talk like for an hour about each of the Gene Keys. So yeah, there is so much more to explore. And it's so fun when you start to look into your own Gene Keys and what you have active in your own profile. But let's have a look at your inner voyage along the golden path. So we're going to look at more specifically what is on your own profile and how to look at what's on your profile to explore more of your own depth and more of your own beautiful divine design. So this in the Gene Keys, your profile, the sequences of your profile is called the golden path, which is the sequences of your personal awakening, in 3 different sequences. And there is about to be a 4th sequence added as well, but there is so much magic within the existing 3. You can, if you don't already have your profile, you can download that from the Gene Keys websites, just genekeys.com, and you'll see on the menu free profile, enter in your birth details, and you'll get your profile. If you want to like pause this and go and get that while I'm talking through, you can, or you can, go back to that at any point. So each path in the journey is a journey of contemplation and of personal transformation. And your DNA is always seeking its higher nature, and know that these codes already exist within yourself. Like the seeds of your evolutionary journey are already within you. They just need to be woken up. And as soon as you're aware, you can't be unaware anymore. And you'll always be pointed towards things that will assist you and support you through your own evolutionary journey, and to move you into these higher frequencies of your purpose, your love, prosperity, and all of those things. And when you vibrate a high enough frequency, like through those codes, you unlock your highest potential as a very like natural consequence, like from a higher frequency moving through them. And it's just your awareness of this coding that helps you to access these gene keys and access the gifts and the divine nature within each of them. And what I love about the path of the gene keys is that, you know, in this golden path and in contemplating the gene keys in your personal life in general, it is like your daily life becomes your greatest muse. Your daily life is what reveals to you where you're in your shadow and how you can step more deeply into your gift. And it's not something that needs to be like reserved or stored away for the big moments and the big decisions or the pivots or anything like that. It is really your daily life where the most magic and the biggest revelations will be revealed to you. And each of the parts of you that is seeking wholeness, so like that, the DNA within you that is seeking to return to its divine nature, each of these paths within the gene keys takes you on that journey inwards to discover that wholeness within yourself. And often, because we have that sense that there is something more to us, we can search outwardly. And that was definitely my experience growing up. I was always looking outwards to like, what's out there? What's next? How can I discover more of myself? And this path of the gene key is really an inwards journey. Like it takes you in to explore what is within yourself. So your holographic profile, which I showed you mine before, is your map to this inner voyage, and it's the entire cosmos that is the backdrop to this journey that you're entering into, but the journey is always going to be inwards. So there are 3 sequences which I'm going to explain briefly now. So the first one is your activation sequence, and this is made up of your life's work, evolution, radiance, and purpose. It is the green spheres if you look at your profile. And this is where I really recommend beginning. This is your 4 prime gifts, your 4 core gifts, and this makes up 70% of your holographic imprint or your holographic makeup. So your activation sequence guides you into a physical grounding into your core stability, to unlock and awaken your innate genius and your creativity, and to discover your purpose and ground into a deeper stability of your purpose. Very, very broad overview of that. There is so much really beautiful elements of it. And yeah, I really recommend beginning here if you are completely new to the gene keys, or to return here if you kind of skimmed over it. There is so much magic within it. And then after you've had this physical grounding through the activation sequence, you move along the path into your Venus sequence. And this is through the Venus sequence is where you enter into the emotional realm of healing all emotional wounds, trauma, childhood wounds. And like the purpose and the path of the Venus sequence is to open your heart. And through the Venus sequence, you really explore how your life is enhanced and enriched through your relationships and some of the shadow patterns that may be sabotaging your relationships and your feeling of love within yourself and in connection to others as well. And this Venus sequence is really beautiful. It takes you on a journey back through time, through your imprinting periods, to like heal different wounding and different shadow patterns that are like making you struggle and suffer in the realm of your emotion. So there's the purpose sphere at the bottom of the profile, becomes your purpose in relationships when you move into the Venus sequence. These are the red spheres, by the way. And then you go into your attraction sphere, which is your attractor field, into your IQ, your intellectual quota or intellectual intelligence. And that imprinting period is from like 15 to 21 years old. And then you move back to your emotional intelligence, your EQ, which is 7 to 14 or 8 to 14. And then you go back to your SQ, which is your spiritual intelligence, also your sense of self, which is 0 to 7 years old, and then to your core wound, which is the imprinting period from when you were in your mother's womb, which is like, that is your piece of the sacred wound that you carry in the world. So the Venus sequence is a very deeply emotional path to go through. And I really do recommend that you have that physical grounding before you enter the deeper depth of this emotional realm of the Venus sequence. And then you move into the Pearl, and the core wound that ends the Venus sequence transforms into your sphere of vocation in the Pearl sequence. So your core wound becomes the energy of your highest vocation. And the Pearl sequence is really about releasing your highest prosperity into the world, using your gifts for the highest service for the collective, experiencing divine synchronicity, and really coming into alignment with your true allies in life that unite you with your fractal line, the people that came from the fracture of source energy as you. And the spheres here are your vocation, your culture, your pearl, and your life's work becomes your brand sphere at this higher octave within the pearl sequence. And your pearl is this beautiful beautiful element of your profile, and it's like your pearl of wisdom that you bring into the world. But your entire profile, it's holographic, so every sphere links in and overlaps and is interwoven with each other, and they all influence each other and connect to each other in different ways. So know that like increasing your frequency in one area will inevitably have a ripple effect into all the others as well, which I think is really, really beautiful. Something I also want to talk about is the Gene Keys approach, which is the art of contemplation. And this was the area that was like the most liberating for me when I first discovered the Gene Keys, is playing with this divine synchronicity and deeper trust within my body that comes from trusting the art of contemplation and playing in this world and using like the gentle path of shadow work, of transformation, of inner healing, and all of these things. And the trust is really that your body already knows what to do. It already holds the codes. It already holds all of the information. And it is by your simple, gentle contemplation that insights and breakthroughs occurred. And that is really all that is required of you. All the action that you will inevitably take will be revealed to you from your body and from your depth, and you don't need to force yourself along this path. It is a very like natural progression when you allow yourself the space and the stillness for that gentle contemplation. So the Gene Keys approach has 4 elements. The first is contemplation. And contemplation is really the middle ground between meditation and concentration, which are like the 3 paths to truth in traditional teachings. So it is like the balance between the path of effort, which is concentration, and the path of passively observing, which is the path of meditation. And through this sustained gentle contemplation on the Gene Keys, you really create these like subtle changes to your biochemistry, and your body literally mutates, your genetic mutates as you move into this higher frequency. And contemplation is so much more than just thinking about something. It's taking a contemplative path to really slowing down inwardly and looking inwards in this relaxed state of patience for revelations to be revealed to you. And in this spirit of deep relaxation, your true intelligence of your body is activated, and your heart softens and opens. And all of this can be later confirmed by the mind. Like this path with the Gene Keys is really an embodied experience, and let the mind take just like to be soft around the edges, to take in the words, to take in the information, but to allow it to be really received in the body. The second element is inquiry. So just asking these introspective questions to allow the wisdom to come from within yourself. The next is gentleness, being nurturing, kind, and gracious towards yourself and towards others. Because once you start to see your own shadows, you will inevitably start to see other people's shadows as well. And that is their work and their personal journey, and not something you need to necessarily inject yourself into, but just having that grace for them to know that if you have gifts within your shadow, then everyone else does as well. And the last is patience, which is really having compassion, honesty, curiosity, and ultimately trusting the underlying process and trusting the divine timing of life and of how things are activated within your body as well. And these are really themes for your entire life. There will always be new layers and depth and nuance revealed to you that you get to continue moving through. And the gene keys are really designed to be contemplated and digested over time. Our body needs time to absorb things, to mutate, to shift, and all of these things. And there can be radical, swift changes, but a lot of the time it takes a period of space and time for these changes to really be deeply absorbed, embodied, and for us to feel them in our life. So be a lover of the mystery, be a lover of the journey with the gene keys and your journey with the gene keys. So where to next? I would love for you to follow me at by Rachel White on Instagram. I have many posts about the gene keys that you can immerse in. I have a story highlight. If you click in there, you'll see all of them. And I also have a collection of podcast episodes and masterclasses and all of that. So if you want a deeper dive into different elements, you can head there. And there are some new masterclasses coming. If you would like to book in a personal deep dive session with me, you can go to my website. You can see it on the screen there. And I have different options. So for each of the sequences that I went through, you can book in a profile session for each of them, or if you want to bundle them all together, we can dive into your entire profile as well. And I also have another option if you just want to look at kind of the overall themes of your gifts and things like that as well. And like I mentioned before, I really recommend you start with the activation sequence if this is your first exposure to the gene keys. So thank you. Thank you so much for being here. I would love to chat with you more if exploring the gene keys is something that you would love to do. I do also have like a self-guided program, like a gentle guided program through the elements of the activation sequence. So you can reach out to me if you would like that, or you can find my self-guided programs online and find that. But just thank you so much for being here. I hope you've enjoyed this exploration of the gene keys. I love this transmission so much. I have so much more to say. So definitely come into my world if you want more of this magic. And I would absolutely love to go through your profile with you and guide you in this magical experience and everything that comes from diving into the gene keys. So thank you again so much for being here. Have an amazing day. And thank you, G, for allowing me to be part of this summit as well.